All right, everyone. Good afternoon. So I see most people have joined. As I'm talking, probably a few more of you will join us, but I just want to take a few words to welcome everyone to LBAN's and Bank of America's webinar series. LBAN, we are a nonprofit. For those of you who might not know us yet, look out for us. Hopefully we are in your future. If you're a Latino business owner, we're trying to do everything possible for Latino businesses to grow and realize their potential. We do a lot of this work in conjunction with Stanford University. We focus on research as well as transformational business education. And this that you all are joining us for is part of a special webinar series we are doing with one of our key sponsors, Bank of America. This series is called Resources That Matter, and we have a great program for you. We're going to be talking about leveraging digital sales to grow your business. There's a fabulous panel that you will be introduced to later in a minute. But it's a great topic, I think, for all of you as the pandemic and other issues have come up. Digital sales and reaching the market and getting your message out using online services is becoming increasingly important. So we're fortunate to have a lot of experts to talk to you about that. And thank you all for joining us. Again, as I said, this webinar is sponsored by the Bank of America. I wanted to take a moment to introduce to you a key executive there, Raquel Gonzalez. She has been just a wonderful supporter of LBAN since the beginning, really. We have really enjoyed the bank's support, and Raquel has been there to really make it happen for us. And through their leadership, we were able to bring this series to you. So we're very proud of that relationship and this series. I want to also mention that Raquel is the senior most executive for the bank, representing all of Silicon Valley and beyond. She also has quite a bit of experience with Latinos, the Latino market, and Latino businesses. So all of this is very much aligned with what we're trying to achieve here today together. And with that, I'm honored to introduce to all of you Ms. Gonzalez, and please give her a warm welcome virtually, as it were. But with that, let me hand over the microphone to her.
Well, thank you so much, Arturo. And thanks to the entire LBAN team for hosting today's session. We're very proud of our partnership with LBAN, and we share the same commitment to supporting Latino and Latina entrepreneurs to continue to grow their business. And for today, I'm really excited to see the very diverse representation in terms of the audience across gender, age, geography, and just a multitude of industries. Thank you for being here. Today's session will focus on how to acquire and engage customers digitally, which I think couldn't be more relevant given the current environment that we're in. And as we learned over the last year, and certainly the beginning of this year, more and more people are now relying on digital connections and digital capabilities to manage so many aspects of their lives. At Bank of America, we are committed to delivering the best in-person or digital connect experience to our clients. And it's really important, we feel, to understand what our clients need, and equally important, right, how those needs are evolving. And I'm proud to say that by focusing on understanding our clients and their needs, we have become a global leader in digital banking, lending, and investment. And just to share a bit about some insight that we gained, last year's Hispanic Business Owner Spotlight, for that report, we surveyed over 1,300 small business owners across the country. And almost 50% of them said that they have set very ambitious goals to prioritize their digital presence for their business through 2030. And that 50% in comparison to their non-Hispanic counterparts is almost double. The non-Hispanic counterparts were only about 27% that were prioritizing their digital presence for their business. So it's very inspiring to see Latinos, that's Latina and Latino entrepreneurs setting ambitious goals for their business and seeing how they're remaining optimistic, especially during these challenging times. And again, in partnership with Elban, we're here to help you. So thank you for all you do to continue to find ways to be successful in terms of running your business. And we know that many people, all of your employees and the community really depend on you. So thank you again for joining today's session. Enjoy it. And on that note, I'll turn it back over to you, Arturo. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel, for those words. And that's great. That's exactly, why this partnership is so strong. All of what Raquel talked about in the bank's goals is to try to empower Latino businesses to continue to grow. If Latino businesses achieve the average growth, the average size of businesses in the US, that's an additional $1.4 trillion for the American economy. That will transform the whole country, not just Latinos. And we are committed to that and are fortunate to have a great partner like the Bank of America. And with that, let me hand it over to Elian. He will be introducing you to the great panel. And let's go over to them right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Arturo. Hola, mi gente. How are we? We are so excited to have this fantastic panel today, Wednesday, July 28th. I want to introduce my panelists, and Mariana, who's helping us on the backstage, will help bring them up. We have a fantastic panel, a true all-star team to talk to you about digital sales. We have Angela Sustaita-Ruiz, who's the co-founder of Brilla Media, and you should be on the lookout because their content is absolutely amazing. We have Lili Valletta, who is the CEO and co-founder of CIEN Plus and CulturIntel, and Marty Martinez, founder and CEO at Social Revolt Agency. Let's give them all a big round of applause. And I just want to quickly just go to everybody, see how are you doing? What are you excited about today's session? And we can start with Angela.
I'm super excited to be here with Marty, Lili. I know that the team, I had a great experience with Stanford with a SLAY program, LBAN program. I was the last in-person cohort, and Marty was the first virtual cohort. So great to see you and Lili here today, and I'm excited to share any insights that can help our small business owners, maximize their online presence.
Yeah, Marty?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I'm a big fan of a lot of these programs that y'all are putting together. I get a lot of value out of them, whether you guys are talking about helping small businesses raise capital or just providing a unique perspective. So it's great to share the stage with Angela and Lili. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll end with Lili.
Thank you, Elian, Angela, and Marty. I'm just excited. I'm going to leave it as that because this is what we need to be doing as a community, democratize the knowledge, build connections, and ask questions because we've all had them. And I'm happy just to share a little bit of perspective of what I've learned along the way.
Thank you all for your time and the excitement. And I have to say, just as excited as we are about this content, we have received so many emails and have seen such high energy for what we're going to speak about today, transforming Latino businesses digitally, getting those digital sales up. Such an important topic. Raquel was talking about it. Arturo was talking about it. The pandemic has brought this to the forefront. And a lot of our entrepreneurs want to know, okay, what's those first steps? How do we get going? I want to start with you, Lili, and your work at CIEN Plus, speaking on cultural intelligence, understanding customers. So I want to just ask a little bit of a broad question, but what should our entrepreneurs be looking at in terms of digital presence? What is the content? What is the data saying? And how should Latinos sort of encompass what's going on digitally?
Yeah, so thank you for the shout out about what we do. We have an entire data science group as part of what CIEN does, and we are constantly mining the voice of the people to understand insights using AI and other fancy tools. But let me answer your question. And this is something that if you take one thing away today, hopefully is this one. Digital and being digital first or mobile first is not an option, is not a side project, is not the thing you do when you have extra money, time, or resources and effort. It is the way you show up in the market. And we saw it in 2020. So I'm going to throw you just 3 numbers to remember that established the case. One is the fact that e-commerce accelerated by 2 years. just in 2020. And we are seeing that same pace of e-commerce activity or shopping online in the first quarter of this year. That's one crazy number. The second one, which many of us that have friends or family in Latin America use a lot, WhatsApp, as a way to connect and communicate, is up by 40%. And digital events like this one are contributing to a whopping 1,000% in the growth of digital events and hosting of digital conferences, et cetera. So all of these things are the writing on the wall of the fact that it's not an option and we should all learn it. Don't be afraid of it. And you have to start getting your presence out, because that is the new mainstream. Digital is the way to go.
Wow, incredible numbers in terms of what we're seeing digitally and what CIEN Plus is showing us. And it's great to tell entrepreneurs that this is needed. I want to talk with Marty. Marty, you run Social Revolt, a company that works with some of the hottest talent, social media-wise. Your content is phenomenal. So for entrepreneurs, as they start going digital, social media is a big aspect of it. Can you tell us kind of what is those beginning steps? How should people start thinking about going digital in the social media space?
Well, to piggyback off of what Lili said, really in today's world, it's not enough to have a website, right? That's almost a requirement. And it's not enough to just have a LinkedIn profile. You really need to have a strong social media identity and be incredibly intentional with how you're communicating your personal brand, but even the problem that your business is solving in the market. And you don't need to spend a whole lot of money in order to do it effectively, because we have tools like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But it is something that needs to be taken seriously. And to Lili's point, in the pandemic, it really has sort of accelerated a lot of growth of the adoption of like e-commerce platforms, but even digital selling. Call me crazy, but I've learned to love it. Selling digitally, because I'm able to kind of captivate, my audience's attention and show them slides and be able to effectively communicate the value that we provide. And there are no limits. I think this whole COVID pandemic has really pushed us to be able to sell to anyone, anywhere, at any time. So it's certainly vital, I think, to any company's success.
Phenomenal. And I want to mention to everybody listening, we're going to be doing questions after our panel. And so you can go ahead and put that on the chat. What are some of your questions? We have 3 experts here on going digital: Lili Valletta with CIEN Plus, Marty Martinez with Social Revolt, and Angelita Sustaita-Ruiz with Brilla Media. And Angela, I want to go to you, because when we were debriefing earlier in the week, you brought up something that I think is critical, which is, as companies go digital, they create that social media. There's so much out there. There's TikTok, Snapchat, there's WhatsApp, there's Facebook. We talked about kind of some of the strategies that companies should focus on. Can you talk about what's your recommendation?
Well, I think, it can be overwhelming. There are a lot of, platforms out there, and, there are new ones popping up all the time. So I think it's important to look at, you want to have a presence, but you want to have presence on platforms you're actually going to use. So that's key. Don't feel like you have to be everywhere. Look and see what platforms would be relevant for you. Which ones are you comfortable using, and select those, and develop content. You can start small. Developing content on a regular basis, content that positions you as an expert. That's a great way you can leverage Instagram, or partner with a community, or, another Latino business to do shared, Instagram lives or Facebook lives, sharing content that people can use, that provides real value. So I think you don't feel overwhelmed. You select only those platforms that you would use, and use them smartly. It could be a blend of content that you're creating. As a small business owner, it's very hard to also generate content on an ongoing basis. So one of the things that you could look at, for instance, if you sell a product like eyeglasses, or if you have a service you want to promote, is identifying potential partners or user-generated content. That maybe it's a client that is using your glasses or is using your service, and they're using it, they're creating a testimonial on their own social platforms. You can, with their permission, repurpose that content. It's user-generated content. You can repurpose it to use on your own platforms too. So it's important to look at different ways of incorporating content that you can use on your own platforms in an organized and strategic way.
Absolutely. And it can be overwhelming. So I like some of your tips there, because I think it is crucial to slim it down and do things that you find comfortable. Lili, I want to go back to you. As we were talking during the week, you sent over your TED Talk, which we're going to include it in the chat. And I absolutely recommend everybody to take 20 minutes. I think it's about 20 minutes to listen to that TED Talk. And one of the things that I heard in there was about sort of the power of Latinos in business, right? Like you see the highest paid actress, right? Latina, the highest paid performer, Latino. As Latino-owned businesses go digital, what should companies sort of encompass? What should they be doing to have that personality shine, since it seems to be a big factor in success?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, with the cultural, social, D&I tensions that we're seeing in the world, there wasn't a better time to unapologetically be Latino, Hispanic, whatever you want to call yourself, because that has value. And I think it starts with us owning that status. And if you happen to be in an industry where that cultural factor is embedded into your product or the offering that you provide, elevate it. You know, there's stories to tell around that, and there's definitely an implied equity. I call it cultural equity in the TED Talk that we should unapologetically recognize, because if we believe the numbers of the 60 million strong that we are as one of the fastest growing economies in the world, then there is value when you and I are part of that growing, vibrant economy. So with that, and I'm going to piggyback on what Angela said, I think you definitely need to maybe go back and rethink what is the story that you're telling to the world, and are we living our Latino-ness as this hidden, fun, beautiful thing that we experience at home with our loved ones? Or are you now daring to put it out into the world? Because if it has worked for Sofia Vergara is the highest paid actress in the world, Despacito is still to this day the most streamed song ever on YouTube, and Bad Bunny was the most streamed artist on Spotify in 2020. There's something there. And I know Elban does something beautiful, because you all tell your stories in a video as part of the assignments. I think we should all do that. And that's a great starting point as a content strategy, where you put on your website, on your LinkedIn, on your Instagram, whatever, that backstory behind the story of you as a founder. And I bet you people will feel it and understand it in a new way because of the times that we're living in.
Love it. Absolutely. Tell your story. That's something that we really tried to amplify with the program. And as Latinos, we all have these incredible stories. I want to really a question for all three. We can start with Angela and work our way through Marty and Lili. But so we have a lot of different companies here, some that are service-based, some that are financial, just a little bit of everything. And so what are your recommended beginning steps, right? As let's say maybe you don't even have a website, or you don't really have an active social media page. What are those first steps that companies should take to really start that journey, as it can be overwhelming?
Well, I think a website is key, just to begin your digital footprint. Make sure that your website looks good and provides information that would encourage a potential client to want to take the conversation further. With maybe some video content can be incorporated. It doesn't have to be too busy. I think start off streamlined. And there are really a lot of great web developers now. It's not as expensive as it used to be. So I think that's a good first step. And then look at the social platforms and see what's out there. And it's good to have your footprint in all of those spots. Make sure it's branded for consistency, but determine which ones will you really be able to use. Do you have an accounting firm? Maybe you could share, video tips on YouTube, or use them on Instagram, or repurpose them on different platforms to show your expertise in that level and within specific niches in accounting. So you really, use what you can to position yourself as an expert. And Marty mentioned that's a really inexpensive way to go and get your name out there and start those conversations. Also, partnerships. There's an accountant on the other end of the country that you may partner with to do some sort of educational programming. There's an organization, Latinx Therapy, and I like them because it's a group of therapists, but they team up together a lot of times to do conversations on different topics related to mental health. So, I think those are all great ways to explore that you can do them pretty quickly and inexpensively to start getting your name out there.
Yeah, Marty, you want to comment?
Yeah, I would say what most businesses get wrong, whether big or small, are the lack of strategy. What we do with our clients, whether it's a brand, nonprofit, or small business, it's we first build a strategy. You don't start building a house, laying the brick, as you're doing it, though that often feels like it is, especially when you're an entrepreneur. But I would take it back to sort of square one, and even auditing your own brand by asking people that are familiar with your business, how do you perceive my business? Do you know what services I sell? And that type of insight that you get from the market, you might find that there's a bit of a misalignment between what people think you do and then what you actually do. And so that type of insight would really inform your overall strategy, and we take it back to square one when we think about what problem are we trying to solve in the market. And we go through this exercise where we create these target personas. So we'll create a fictitious character about our customer, our ideal customer. And we'll go as far as creating like demographic information. How old are they? What is their title? What are their pain points? And how do we fit into that equation? So the idea is then you create and craft content around the problems that we're trying to solve in the market. So if for us, for example, we work with a lot of brands, and typically that's with chief marketing officers. So we go through an exercise where we ask ourselves, what are their pain points and what are they trying to solve for? What are those KPIs that are really going to resonate with our potential customer? And when you create content like that, it does selling for you when you're not selling. Because oftentimes when someone decides to work with you, they've already seen Lili on TV. They've already watched her TED Talk, or they've already engaged Angela in some way, right? They've already looked at her LinkedIn and stuff, and likely there's a lot of pre-selling that happens. So I call it sort of the cookie crumb approach. You're leaving these little nuggets of information that get your potential customers to come closer and closer and closer to picking up that phone and saying, hey, I've been watching you for a while. I'd love to find a way to work together. So it truly is fundamental, having a really strong strategy, so that you're not just throwing spaghetti on the wall,
I love that. Love that. And we'll finish it off, Lili. What are those steps that you think companies should take?
I love that Marty took us back to the strategy, because if you're going to start showing up saying something digitally, but you don't know why you're saying it, then it's going to be spaghetti on the wall. Yeah. Now there's a marketing Macarena that those of you that know me have probably heard me say it before, that I think applies beautifully to anything, companies big or small. And it's in any time you're developing that strategy and defining your voice, you have to the very first step is getting to the heart, then you get to the mind, and then you get to the wallet. Heart, mind, wallet, in that order. And that's why it's kind of like a dance Macarena. But the heart, and in this case, is the heart of who you want to engage with and reach and mean something for them. That doesn't happen when you tell them features and benefits and how good you are and how cheaper or better or faster you are. Is when you demonstrate why you can bring value to them. So I think a quick sheet for all of us, even if you don't have your strategy all figured out yet, but if you don't, call Marty, he can help. It's the fact that make sure that your website is not just me, look at me and look how great I am, but it's more like demonstrating what value you can deliver and how you get to the heart of the needs of the people you want to serve first. Then you explain what you do and all that other stuff that gets to the head. So, and I want to make sure I get this out before I forget to, Elian. There's a quick cheat, because maybe some of you are like, oh my gosh, my website is awful, or I'm not ready to build it, etc. There's so many platforms out there that have already templates, right? Whether it is WordPress or Wix, even GoDaddy is getting a little bit better with templates. And if you don't have anything but just your purpose statement and then a link that goes into your Instagram, because let's say you're selling jewelry and that's where all the stuff is, then at least you have that pass through of somewhere. but you have your gateway website that gets people in. So don't feel like it has to be perfect with 10 pages deep. It could be just one with this is why we exist and how I get to the heart of what my customers need. Click here and maybe you end up sending them off to your Shopify website somewhere else or your social pages. So don't get paralyzed, get started. And Wix, GoDaddy, WordPress, all of them, even if you don't have a developer, have great templates at least to get started.
I love that. And I hope that all of you listening are taking down notes because you are getting some immense knowledge here from all three. And on the chat and on the agenda, we do have a checklist that was provided by Marty Martinez by Social Revolt. So make sure that you do download it because there's some great steps there. I want to talk about kind of a hidden part of going digital, or at least sort of getting word out about your company. And it's something that's really challenging for a lot of companies, but I know that all three of you have great expertise here and have really made this a big part of your business, which is PR and working with the media, right? How do you leverage that? How does that local company, how does that small business, how do you leverage PR? For a lot of people, it seems like such a challenge that they don't even try to tackle it, right? So we'd love to go across, and maybe this time we could start with you, Lili, and then Marty and Angela, but how should companies address PR? How should they address going to those media outlets?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to save a lot of my talking to Angela, who is probably our super PR pro in this bunch here. But I'm going to tell you a backstory. A lot of people that see me on television today, they think I have some like PR strategy and a PR agent or something like that. No, I was discovered on YouTube. So what happened was I started putting videos out on YouTube about the shifting demographics, what the numbers mean to the economy, to the world of business, to Fortune 100s. And a producer in New York saw it and called me. Literally, that happened. So kind of like Justin Bieber style. And all of a sudden, then I ended up on television. And fast forward now, it's a thing that, again, people think there was some grand strategy and it was so expensive to do. No, it was having a voice, creating the content and making sure you were consistent on the subject matter that you want to own and in demonstrating, thought leadership. And in my case, and maybe it was a little bit of luck too, somebody noticed and here I am on TV. But that happened in that way. Now, how did that happen? It created a story. It delivered value of something somebody else wasn't saying at the time. So how do you engage media? Not with a press release telling them how great you are, but with a story that tells them how great the contributions to your community are, but not you. It's more the impact that you can generate and things like that. Now, I'm really going to punt into Angela because she'll tell you about tools and places and spaces, but net, put content out as a thought leader because you never know, you may get discovered and go on television. And the stories are not about you, but what you enable in others. That is a human story that is not selfish. Angela, how do you get it out?
Well,
I think all the tricks.
What you said goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is how if you're starting off and you don't have a website yet or you're not online yet, though positioning yourself as an expert early on using any platform, YouTube like you did, Lili, is a perfect way to get known. You're sharing your expertise that people can really put to use. So I think, that's a great way to start. But, you want to use PR the right way. You don't always need an agency to do some of the work, especially as you're starting out, because you really are, a lot of you guys, you own your own businesses. You're very passionate about what you do. So you are the best person a lot of times to help tell that story and tell what you're doing in your community. How is your product going to help, your service offering going to help a specific demographic? So you can start, small. You don't put a press release out for every single thing that you do. You want to make sure that you have real information that will be useful, that media is going to want to actually build a story around. Keep it personal, keep it real, and not all about you, is what Lili was saying. But use press releases strategically. There is a digital benefit indirectly when you use press releases. So a lot of time you hear of wire services. There's a variety of wire services, but you need to do research on them because some of them can be very pricey with word overages. So you can use those services, but the beauty of them is that a lot of times when you distribute over wire, you get guaranteed placements on other websites. And so that kind of indirect SEO benefit that you get from that helps to find your company is visible online when people do searches. So that's one of the ways that you have that build that digital presence is through the distribution of press releases. But to add to the press release distribution, use them strategically for newsworthy use that people can really use. And you still need to do PR or do outreach to media. So in addition to sending that release out, you want to build those relationships with media that are covering, stories or information that the work that you're doing or ties to your product, because that's really those relationships will be key as you continue to build your business. And then you want to help. It takes time to also pitch a story. You may have an interesting story, but maybe the reporter wants to get a balanced story by talking to other people in your same field. So it takes time and patience to pitch media and get stories placed. So keep that in mind. As you're starting out, it's something you can do because, again, you're the one that can most passionately tell the story about what it is you're trying to achieve. But as you get bigger, potentially you look at an agency that can help, continue to maintain that visibility. So I know that there's a question, I believe, that came in. I don't know. It's I can answer this now, Eliana.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So that was about the media and press releases. I think if anyone has questions, I can definitely answer those in the Q&A portion of this conversation. The question I just received from Marion is, when is the right time for paid PR versus organic? Is it wise to pay for PR if you don't have product market fit? So for PR, when you're doing outreach, you want to generate coverage that's organic. That means non-paid media coverage. So you're pitching a story, there's no payment happening with that. So, there's the paid is when you're doing paid content, like paid social boost, but for paid PR is kind of paid PR is not really something that PR people like to talk about. When you're PR or a true PR professional will pitch stories to generate content. However, the question about the paid could go to like influencer content, because sometimes PR agencies would pay influencers to develop content, and that is still an important strategy depending on what you're doing. Again, going back to strategy that we talked about earlier is key for all of this. But when you're doing PR around your business or a service, you want to do that should be organic, and that means earned media. Paid would be if you're working with an influencer. So part of your strategy is determining what would the flow of that be. You'd potentially start out with organic, and then as your company grows, you could look at influencer marketing, which is a paid sort of component of that. So I hope that answers your question. Marty, I don't know, Marty has a lot of experience in this as well. So Marty, do you have any feedback on a paid sort of component for amplifying with social?
Yeah, so I have an interesting take on this. This is I'm going to call it like a bit of a PR hack. So the landscape has changed drastically over the past, let's say, 3 to 5 years, particularly when it comes to media publishing companies. Media publishing companies used to get a ton of organic traffic, right? That people would go directly to Washington Post, to New York Times, to any of these big media companies. But over the years, these media companies have realized that much of their referral traffic is coming from, you guessed it, social media platforms. And so with that, there's been a huge shift in how these media publishing companies are generating revenue. With the massive decline of people going directly to this media publishing sites, consumers are more and more going to these less and less over the past 3 to 5 years. So these media publishing companies have had to get innovative in how they generate revenue. And what I'm going to share with you is something that I often recommend to my clients. We don't offer PR as a service, but if the goal is to get a media feature in a publishing on a publishing site, there are ways to do that, and it's called advertorial or sponsored blog posts. What I've discovered is that there's a pricing arbitrage that exists among media publishing companies, meaning that no one media company charges the exact same for this advertorial or sponsored blog post. And to the untrained eye, to regular consumers, it looks like regular earned media content. Now, the only thing that differentiates a true earned media versus sort of an advertorial is at the start of it, it'll say sponsored blog or paid for by. When in reality, consumers tend to miss over that. All they see is the headline and they're like, oh, so-and-so wrote about, company X. So then that you have sort of an association with, it kind of builds that credibility. But with a lot of these media companies, you can write it yourself. You can provide the picture yourself. And in my experience, you could get those media placements for as low as $1,000. And so if you don't have a ton of money to hire a PR agency and pay $5,000 retainer, 6-month contract, what you could do is start reaching out to those media companies and ask them what the rates are on advertorial or sponsored blog content. It's the easiest, quickest, and cheapest way for you to get a story that you write yourself, or you get a writer to write, and now you have a placement in media. PR professionals, true PR professionals probably cringe at that because it's not traditional earned media, but hey, if it costs you $1,000 and you're gonna get a headline in a reputable magazine, sounds like a win to me.
But you know that it's an old school reinvention of what used to be the mat release, which was a similar thing where you would provide content, pre-developed content to outlets to run. So that's definitely a way around that.
And you can layer it, by the way, and unapologetically take that post and then boost it or just screen grab it as seen on Forbes. And then you take and stretch that $1,000 as if it was like $1 million worth.
And then you can layer that with influencer marketing. I briefly touched on that. If it's a product or service that, in influencers, there's all kinds of influencers. You just need to find the right ones that will work for you and your brand. But that can help amplify that further, giving a different spin. And that obviously can be a paid or it could be a partnership. So there are different ways to work around that as well.
And one last thing I'll add is that, if you're able to accumulate these evergreen pieces of content that it's in media publish, it's published in, media publishing site 1, 2, 3, and it's evergreen, meaning that content's never going to go out of style, right? It's something that is, no matter if you're talking about it in Q1, Q3, or 2022, Q2, Q3, it still has relevancy. And what Lili said, amplifying that content. And promoting it out, so then to the most people are going to see, whoa, that company was talked about in Forbes or Washington Post or any of these big reputable sites. But then now you're creating sort of the illusion that you're everywhere and that everyone is talking about you. And you can promote content like that for literally as low as $1 a day on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. It gets a little bit more expensive on LinkedIn, but yeah.
Oh, phenomenal data here. And again, if you're listening, take notes because you're getting some advice that I mean you won't hear anywhere else. I want to throw a curveball. We have a couple questions that I want to get to, and I know we're close to the end of our panel, but I want to kind of throw a curveball here because so much of what we talk about is external. And we're not going to look at that question yet. I know it came up on the chat, but we're going to ask that in a second. But my question here is, we talk a lot about external tools, right? We want to be on social media. We want to be on Facebook. We want to have our website. But something that we notice Latino companies and sometimes companies in general kind of lack is the internal digital presence, those internal digital tools to help you run your company better. And I know it's not necessarily the topic here, but I do want to go around to all three, and we can start with you, Angela, go to Marty, and then Lili. But what are those digital tools that companies should have as they start to scale, as they start to increase their employee count, as they start to go online? What are those tools that people should start working on for their employees?
Well, for employees, if you're talking online, there are different tools you can use. I was thinking online because we were just talking about this, about paid, and that's, using digital to amplify your company's presence online is important, but you also need to make sure you're analyzing the feedback that you're getting on digital platforms, on your website. Like, what do the analytics and the numbers look like, to modify and adjust your strategy as you move forward. So Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout are some that are used for social, monitoring, like, what is the engagement rate on different contents being put out to help you determine, should I keep doing this sort of content, or do I need to change it up to make sure that I'm engaging with my core audience? So those are more social tools. I know that there are a variety of other tools as you're building your business. Lili has done amazing things with CIEN, and I know that they use a lot of really cool internal tools. So Lili, you could expand on that?
Yep. So I definitely will go into just the internal tools. So I guess shameless plug, because they're one of our clients too. We are a Google Enterprise company. So everything internally lives inside our Google Drive, our Google Cloud, our Google Tools. But that helps with integration, with real-time communications, with the way everything is organized internally. And by the way, a lot of resources that Google does offer for businesses of any size, even if you're not a Google Suite type of client, are available for free. So shameless plug, grow.google has everything you can click and download and learn about. Facebook has also a similar thing. Anyway, so we definitely are on the drive. We use HubSpot for lead generation and kind of monitoring flow from sites, because sometimes we have not just our regular website, but mini sites that are specifically tied to a campaign. So HubSpot is another one. Look it up. And obviously, in addition to that, there's other project management tools and platforms that we use, but definitely that's how we use it. Oh, and another thing, I guess we're part of that 40% of increased usage of WhatsApp. And Angela knows this because she's been in one of our WhatsApp groups. We create groups for the company-wide announcements. We also have them for specific projects that maybe are hitting the last mile mark of a deliverable. So unapologetically, I know some people use Slack as well, but we are a WhatsApp power user company for sure. Anyway, that's a little bit under the hood of how we do things with our teams.
Love that. Marty, any tips for the internal usage?
Internal usage, we use, to me, I think what's fundamental to any business is having a strong project management software, because it really helps everyone ensure that everyone's on the same page and tasks are getting done on time and in an efficient manner. We're really big on a platform called Monday. We've used platform like Basecamp, we've used Asana, we've used Trello, we've gone through these painful evolutions, and recently we adopted Monday, and I highly recommend it. Everybody prefers different types of tools, so what might work for one company might not work for another. But if you're in the B2B space, I would highly recommend what Lili had mentioned, HubSpot. It allows you to kind of track leads, track that entire sales process from inquiry to close. And then it could get pretty expensive, but I will say that for most small businesses, you can get pretty darn far with just the free version of it. And and it'll even give you insight into who's coming to your website. I'll get an email every single day from companies that are using very specific IP addresses, and it'll say, oh, Ford, someone from Ford was on your website, or someone from Spotify was on your website. So that type of insight is really valuable when you then take that data and then connect it with your LinkedIn premium account. And then you see who's digging around and looking at your profile, company profile, things like that. So it could really kind of inform any sort of potential outreach that you have if you're a B2B business.
Hey, before I forget, team, since Marty just said it, absolutely worth every penny, the LinkedIn premium account, especially if you're in a services business, or even if you're in retail and you have to get to buyers or chief merchandising type folks, absolutely worth it. My husband, I'll put him on the spot here because he's in the consumer products. He literally says he can attribute over $10 million of sales just because of LinkedIn Premium. It's crazy. So buy it, get it. Oh, Elian.
We lost your.
There we go. Okay, I think you can hear.
There you go.
Yeah, some great tools both internally and externally.
Elian, before we leave too, I know that we're running short on time, but I know there was talk about some companies may be looking to sell products online too. So I think if we were going to add some of those tools that are out there for that, there's Shopify and WooCommerce that I have experience with that you can install them into WordPress, and those are pretty easy to use if you're selling those are tools for selling online. So I wanted to just throw those in there as well for those of you who may be looking to sell any products online.
Absolutely phenomenal. And we're running short on time, but we do have some questions from attendees. So I want to just quick fire. I'll send them out. Whoever wants to answer can answer them, and that way we can get through all of them before we need to close. First question comes from Guillermo, who says, how do you best organize and analyze the data from your website and social channels to improve the audience's experience with your company? So whoever wants to take that. Yeah, go ahead.
Marty.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Certainly, it always surprises me how little people pay attention to Google Analytics. Fundamentally, having an understanding of the website traffic that you're currently getting, I think is really imperative to understanding what content is resonating most with your audience. On the social channels, we do use internally Sprout Social for a lot of our clients. So we're able to analyze a lot of the metrics across LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and things like that. And what we'll do is we will analyze a lot of the data on a month-by-month basis. And we don't just analyze the data for the sake of analyzing it. As anyone would attest here, data is only as good as the information that it informs, like the actions that it allows you to take next. So a combination of Google Data Studio, Sprout Social would really kind of help inform your audience experience. And another tool that I would recommend is Hotjar. Hotjar is, we use that for a lot of website clients that we work with. And it's basically heat mapping technology. And it screen records like the first 1,000 people that come to your site. So having that type of insight when someone comes to your website, knowing what's the first thing they go to, where is their mouse hovering? And you might find that what you're trying to get your customers to do, they're maybe a little confused. So that's one thing, completely free tool, highly recommend it.
Phenomenal. And we have another question from Manuel, which says, managing paid campaigns such as Google AdWords can be complex because of all of the possible settings involved. What could be the top metrics experience to focus on when hiring a good firm or employees to manage your campaigns? Anybody want to take that?
Well, I think, the paid advertising has changed a lot over the last several years and continues to change. So I think, if you could find an expert, because it's very easy, there's a lot of tools there to make it very easy to waste money, right? Because you really have to know what you're doing and how to target specific groups to be able to make it effective and have an ROI. So I think if you can have someone that has previous experience with any sort of, media buying for, Google ads and things like that will be key, because it's something that can be overwhelming, especially for small business owners. You're so focused on trying to start your business to try to learn something that may be a bit foreign to you at the beginning. To do it well, I would recommend getting, an expert, and it doesn't have to be with an agency. I mean, there are a lot of independent consultants that work doing that as well. So I think there are a lot of different ways around that, but you want to make sure you do it well, because it's easy just to click a button for $400 thinking you're going to make movement, and you really aren't. There's 7 billion people on Facebook every month, I believe, is the latest number I'd seen. And, reaching them, you have to be very strategic to make sure you're reaching them. And that means you need to be have strategy with how you're doing that on the back end through those media buys.
Elian, maybe 2 cents on that one. Maybe it's always also good to weed out what you don't want. And also to ground us all here, things not to get too overly excited about or worried about. One is number of followers. Yeah. Why? Because the algorithms keep changing so much that it's a pay to play. And quite honestly, a lot of your followers end up not even seeing your own content unless you're boosting it. So where I'm going with that, if it's a company or a consultant is telling you, I'm going to make sure I grow you from 500 to 50,000 in 30 days, that is an incomplete metric because that may be a lot of garbage volume, but it may not be your right customers or not even real profiles. So don't get wowed by just that. Let me acquire more followers, or let me even, this is crazy for me to say, or visits to your website. Because if people are just dropping in, but they don't go deeper or don't engage, then you're paying a consultant just to get eyeballs with no engagement. So be careful of those metrics, or you getting overly excited or like, oh my gosh, we just added another 100 followers this week. What are they doing? Are they even reading your stuff and clicking on a conversion driver? That's the real metric.
And one thing, is important that I don't think we've touched on is the importance of email marketing, because that still it can be a very effective way to reach your core audience, and building that database will be key for you as you grow your business. And if you want to sell, those sort of things add value of having, a solid base, but it also helps, drive that connection with your customers, and is, I think, an important tool in addition to what you're doing on social. So it kind of seems old school to talk about email marketing, but I think it's very powerful still, as long as you are using it the right way.
Yep.
And I would add that the number one metric above anything else is ROAS, the return on ad spend. That fundamental, if they're talking about website clicks, traffic, and that's all great, but at the end of the day, you want to hire a firm to implement a paid strategy that has a return on your ad spend. And I would be weary. I would ask them straight up, like, hey, what are your metrics around ROAS for B2B? What's your ROAS on e-commerce to drive, consumer facing products? Second one is do your due diligence. Everyone, when you sit down and talk with them, they're putting forward their best self. Ask to speak with current clients, ask to speak with previous clients, and go do your due diligence. Yeah. If you don't do that, because you're making a big investment in it as a small business, one step in the wrong direction will put you, it'll put you backwards. And every cent and every dollar you spend counts. So it's imperative that you get as much information as you can.
Absolutely phenomenal information here. And we're up on time. I know that there's a few questions here that have been left unanswered, but we'll definitely follow up with that. I know some people are asking about outsourcing social marketing to a company. Marty, maybe that's a good place for you in the chat to talk to them about it. But since we're up on time, I want to give a big round of applause to all of the panelists here, Angela, Marty, and Lili. Thank you so much for being with us here today and spending the time sharing your expertise. You're all doing a phenomenal job. So thank you so much for being here. For our attendees, apart from this big round of applause that we're giving, we want you to stick around. We are going to be doing some networking, and I'm going to have Jennifer come up on stage and introduce us. So again, thank you, all of you. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and thank you for all your knowledge and help.
Gracias.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, amazing job, Elian, Marty, Lili, Angela. Thank you all for their insight. I can recognize the challenge for entrepreneurs, small businesses, where I say they are wearing so many hats. All of you are wearing so many hats. You're the CFO, the CEO, the CEO, the content creator, the product driver, all of that. And yet we're laying on how do you grow your business digitally. And so I want you to know that there are resources available to you. There are resources available. You do have to look for them. You do have to engage with them. But again, I just really want to say thank you to Marty, to Angela, and to Lili. We put their contact information in the chat. Their website is in the chat as well. So if anything that they said could be of service to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to them. There's a couple things that were mentioned that I just really want to highlight is start with the strategy, right? We don't want to waste time, to waste money on throwing spaghetti and seeing what sticks. So for all of you that are getting started with this, start with the strategy and know that having a website, having a LinkedIn profile is a given, it's a must, but it's not enough. You have to keep going from there. We sincerely believe and hope that the content and the conversation today was valuable and will point you in the right direction as you continue in your entrepreneurship journey, growing your small business. I want you to know that from LBAM, we are here to support you in any way that we can. So please don't hesitate to engage with us, to follow us on social media, to subscribe to our newsletter as well. As we mentioned, this is the 4th webinar of a 6-part series. So this great conversation and content continues. Our next date is September 23rd. It's right in the middle of Hispanic Heritage Month, September 23rd at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Here is what our topic is all about. We've talked about this several times before, or it was mentioned several times in this particular session, is know how to tell your story. Know how to tell the story about you as an entrepreneur, and certainly about your product or service in your company. That is what we will be discussing on September 23rd. My challenge to all of you is to invite another business owner. Look in your Rolodex, look in your phone, look in your contacts. What other small business can benefit from connecting with and engaging with this type of content? I encourage you to help us elevate the entire Latino community by reaching out to someone you know and inviting them to September 23rd's webinar. All right. Well, we also know the power of networking and connecting with other people. This is a great opportunity for you to engage with other small businesses, other business owners, other entrepreneurs. I invite you to click on the networking room, join one of those rooms. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know the opportunities you're going to that will arise to engage or collaborate with others. So again, thank you all for joining us on this session. We welcome you back on September 23rd. And right now, I invite you to step into the networking room on the Socio app. Thank you everyone for attending.